Hello there, my the warm quiet. Hermione was pretending to read, but her focus had long drifted. She was aware of the firelight flickering against Ron's face, the way his freckles looked softer in its glow, the faint rhythm of his breathing. Ron was unusually quiet, not the bored kind of quiet, but thoughtful. After a long stretch of silence, he spoke softly, almost to himself. "Do you ever think about how it'll feel when this all ends?" Hermione blinked, caught off guard. "When what ends?" "You know," Ron said, waving his wand vaguely at the fire. "School. Hogwarts. All of it. Us." She smiled faintly. "You make it sound like we're ancient." He gave a short laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "No, I don't know. Feels strange sometimes, thinking about not sitting here every night, not arguing about essays or Quidditch or anything." Hermione's voice softened. "Maybe that's the best part of Hogwarts. No matter how much changes, there's always a part of it that stays." Ron looked at her for a moment, his expression half lost in the firelight. "Yeah, maybe." Then, quietly, faintly, the fire changed. It wasn't sudden or frightening. The flames didn't roar or flare. Instead, the orange embers began to fade, shifting to a deep gold, then to a strange silvery blue that pulsed gently like light through water. Hermione's book slipped from her lap. Ron sat up straight, wand forgotten. The air in the room seemed to shimmer, warm but weightless, and for a heartbeat, Hermione felt the faintest vibration, not sound exactly, but something that hummed through her bones like the echo of an old spell. What's happening?" Ron whispered. Hermione leaned forward, eyes wide, the light reflecting in them. "It's magic," she said softly, "but not like any I've seen." The fire shifted again. In the center of the blue flame, a shape began to appear, faint at first, like a ripple in glass. Slowly, it formed into the outline of two figures. At first, Hermione thought it might be a reflection, but no, these were not their reflections. The figures were older. Ron and Hermione was touched, speechless, as the blue light deepened and the shapes became clearer. The pair in the fire were seated in the same common room, older, quieter, but unmistakably them. Ron stared, eyes wide. "Hermione, is that—" She didn't answer. The older version of herself turned a page in a book, smiling faintly. Ron's older self reached across the table, brushing her hand with his fingers, as if it was something he'd done for years. The younger, Hermione's heart skipped. It was so simple, that touch, but the magic surrounding it shimmered with warmth. The entire room seemed to breathe in unison with the light, and somewhere deep in the castle, Hermione thought she heard the faint ticking of a clock slowing down. "It's showing us," she began softly, "a future." Ron looked from the flames to her, his voice low. "Our future?" Hermione shook her head slightly, unsure. "Maybe. What could be? Not what will be." The image wavered gently, like a dream caught in motion. The older pair spoke, but their voices were muffled, blending into the crackling of the blue fire. It wasn't meant to be heard, only felt. And what Hermione felt was peace. Then, As quietly as it had begun, the flames turned back to their warm orange hue. The common room returned to normal, the silence, the soft hum, the faint pop of wood. Ron and Hermione sat in stunned stillness. Neither spoke for a long time. The only sound was the soft ticking of the clock above the mantel, marking the seconds between what had just happened and what it might mean. Finally, Hermione found her voice. "It wasn't a spell," she said softly. "At least, not one anyone cast tonight." Ron rubbed the back of his neck. "Then what was it?" "A glimpse," she murmured, more to herself. "Something about the castle. It remembers moments. It keeps them." Ron frowned, thoughtful. "Like portraits do?" "Sort of," she said. "But this was different. It wasn't someone else's memory. It was..." She trailed off, her voice turning quiet. "It was ours." Ron shifted slightly, the firelight soft against his face. "Hermione," he said slowly, "if that was real, then do you think we're supposed to do something about it?" Hermione turned toward him, meeting his gaze. For a heartbeat, time seemed to pause again, just like it had inside the flame. The castle felt alive around them, listening. "I think," she said softly, "that we don't have to do anything. Some magic happens when it's ready." Ron smiled faintly, his voice quiet. "Guess that means I don't have to plan it, then." She laughed, a small, soft laugh that filled the quiet room like music. "No, Ronald, you never do." The fire crackled again, steady and warm. The enchanted moment had passed, but something remained in its wake. Not a spell, not a vision, but a thread. Something unspoken, but alive between them, like the faint glow of a charm that doesn't fade when morning comes. Outside, the snow continued to fall, each flake drifting down as if slowed by gentle enchantment. In the towers above, the enchanted candles flickered as though the castle itself were smiling. And somewhere deep in its magic, Hogwarts kept their moment safe, preserved in its heart, waiting for the day when the memory would no longer be a vision of the future, but a reflection of something real. For now, though, the clock ticked softly on, and the night held them in its gentle, endless stillness. The next morning at Hogwarts dawned softly, painted in tones of silver and gold. Sunlight streamed through the tall, frosted windows of the great hall, catching on goblets and scattering warmth across the long tables. It was one of those mornings when everything seemed unusually still, as if the castle itself had paused to listen. Ron and Hermione sat across from each other at breakfast, the hum of students around them blending into a comfortable background murmur. Ron was stirring his porridge absent-mindedly, his spoon tracing slow circles. Hermione was reading the Daily Prophet, though her eyes were not truly focused on the page. They hadn't spoken much about the night before. The image in the fire still lingered, the older versions of themselves, the warmth that had filled the room, but neither could quite find the words for it. It was too strange, too delicate to bring into daylight. Harry slid into the seat beside Ron, reaching for toast. "You two look like you spent the night in the library again," he said lightly. Hermione lowered the paper, smiling faintly. "Not quite," she said. Ron grinned half-heartedly. Yeah, unless the libraries started showing people's futures in the fireplace. Harry paused, toast halfway to his mouth. Sorry, what? Hermione quickly shook her head. It was nothing dangerous, just something odd, a bit of old castle magic maybe. It's gone now. Harry studied her for a moment, but the softness in her tone and the calm in her eyes convinced him there was no real worry. He simply nodded and went back to his toast. Hogwarts never runs out of surprises, he murmured. But Hermione couldn't shake the thought. If the castle had shown them a glimpse of what could be, it wasn't random. Hogwarts was alive in its own quiet way. It remembered, listened, and sometimes, when it wished to, revealed things meant to be seen. That evening, as twilight melted into night, she returned to the common room. The fire was burning again, golden and calm. The air was warm, but charged, like the hush before snowfall. She carried a small notebook in which she had been writing observations, her way of trying to understand the inexplicable without breaking its spell. Ron entered a few minutes later, arms full of chocolate frogs and a deck of wizard cards. Studying again? He teased, though his voice was softer than usual. Not studying, Hermione said without looking up. Remembering. He tilted his head. Remembering what? She hesitated, then smiled. Something the castle showed us. Ron looked toward the fire, steady, ordinary, and yet somehow waiting. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed. You think it'll happen again? I don't know, she admitted, but I think Hogwarts is trying to tell us something. Maybe about us, maybe about time, or how magic connects people. Ron frowned slightly. You think it's about love? Hermione's quill froze mid-sentence. She turned toward him slowly. I didn't say that. No, but you were thinking it. Her lips parted in surprise, and for a moment she didn't know what to say. Ron's gaze wasn't teasing this time. It was steady, honest, and a little uncertain, the way he looked when he wasn't trying to be funny. Before she could answer, the fire flickered. Both turned toward it instantly. The light dimmed, deepened, and then, just like before, shifted into that soft blue-silver glow. The air vibrated faintly, the hum of old enchantments filling the room like distant music. But this time, the image was different. Instead of showing their older selves, the firelight twisted into something new, a scene not from the future, but from the past. The common room looked younger, brighter, as if the walls themselves had fewer stories to tell. And sitting before the fire were two students neither of them recognized at first. A young witch with short, curling hair and a kind smile, and a red-haired boy in Gryffindor robes, laughing as they shared a book. Hermione's breath caught. They look like us, Ron finished, his voice soft. The two figures in the fire were laughing quietly. The boy said something they couldn't hear, and the girl rolled her eyes fondly before nudging his arm. Their laughter echoed faintly, not quite sound, not quite memory, something in between. Hermione leaned closer. It's showing us someone else's story. Ron frowned. Who? As if in answer, the girl in the fire turned her head. Her features shimmered for a moment and then settled. Hermione gasped. That's Lily Evans. Ron's eyes widened. Your mum? Harry's mum. And the boy beside her, though his hair was darker and his glasses missing, could only be one person. James, Hermione whispered. The two of them sat watching in reverent silence. The young couple in the flames looked happy, caught in a small, perfect moment, sharing laughter in the same spot where Ron and Hermione now sat. Ron rubbed the back of his neck, voice quiet. So the fire, it's showing love stories. Not just love, Hermione said, her voice hushed with awe. It's showing the moments that made love. The quiet ones, the ones no one remembers. The image began to change again, rippling like pages turning in a book. Now it showed another pair, older students this time, a Ravenclaw and a Hufflepuff, sitting together under candlelight, sharing tea and notes. Then another, a Slytherin boy leaving a flower on a desk, vanishing before it could be seen. Each scene lasted only seconds, fading softly into the next. All small moments, all tender, all deeply human. And then, the final image formed. The blue glow brightened, almost silver now, and the fire showed them one more pair. Ron and Hermione, but not as before, not older, not years in the future. This time it was them, as they were now, sitting in front of the fire, exactly as they were in that moment. Hermione's hand resting on her notebook, Ron's wand on the rug beside him. The same warmth, the same stillness, but in the reflection, their hands were intertwined. Ron froze. Hermione's breath hitched. The image flickered, holding steady just long enough for both of them to feel it as truth. Not a prediction, but a possibility waiting to be chosen. And then, the flames went dark. The common room was silent, except for the slow ticking of the clock and the faint whisper of snow against the windows. Hermione stared at the empty hearth. It's teaching us something, she said at last, about magic, about connection. It's showing that the strongest spells aren't cast with wands. Ron swallowed, his voice almost a whisper. Then how are they cast? She turned toward him, her eyes soft and shimmering in the firelight. By caring, by choosing, by seeing someone, really seeing them. Ron's lips curved into a faint smile, and for once he didn't try to speak. He didn't need to. The fire resumed its normal glow, orange and gold, but the warmth it gave off now was different. It wasn't just heat, it was comfort. Hermione closed her notebook, setting it gently aside. Ron leaned back, watching her in silence, the flicker of the flames painting her face with light. I think Hogwarts remembers these moments, she said softly. All of them. Every laugh, every kindness, every time someone chooses to care, it keeps them alive. Ron nodded slowly. Then I guess it just added another one. Hermione smiled, the corners of her eyes glistening. Maybe it did. Outside, the snowfall thickened, glowing faintly in the light of the common room windows. The castle hummed its ancient tune, full of secrets, full of heart. And in the heart of Gryffindor Tower, two friends sat together, closer than before, their silence woven not from awkwardness, but from understanding. The fire whispered softly, its blue light gone, but its memory lingering. The magic wasn't finished, not yet. It had more to show them, but it would wait, because even ancient enchantments knew some things, like love, unfold only when the heart is ready to see. The next few days drifted by like soft pages turning in a half-forgotten book. Snow still blanketed the castle grounds, muffling footsteps and wrapping Hogwarts in its own quiet kind of dream. Everything seemed ordinary: classes, homework, meals. But for Ron and Hermione, something had shifted in the stillness. There was a quiet between them now, not heavy or awkward, but filled with something neither could quite name. Hermione noticed it first in the library. They were sitting together, parchment spread across the table, a faint glow from their candles casting circles of light onto the wood. The scent of old paper and ink filled the air, soothing and familiar. Ron was supposed to be working on his potions essay, but instead, he was doodling tiny broomsticks in the corner of his parchment. Hermione sighed, though not unkindly. "Ron, you'll never get through this essay if you keep pretending the word essence looks like a Quidditch goalpost." Ron chuckled quietly. "I can't help it. Snape's handwriting looks like it was written by someone being chased." Hermione's lips curved into a small smile, but she didn't look up from her notes. "Well, maybe if you focused on the instructions instead of the handwriting." She stopped suddenly. The candle flame between them flickered once, twice, then stilled. The air shifted, faintly, like the hush before thunder, only this was gentler, softer. "Did you feel that?" Ron asked, leaning forward. Hermione glanced around. The library was empty, save for the faint rustle of pages from distant corners. The air smelled faintly of parchment dust, and something else, something sweet, like honey and cedarwood. "I think," she whispered, "it's happening again." Before Ron could answer, the light changed. It wasn't blue like the fire had been before, but golden, thin threads of it weaving through the air between them like strands of sunlight underwater. Hermione stared, enchanted. The threads shimmered, forming faint shapes, glimmers of memory, moving like breath. Ron leaned closer, voice barely a whisper. "What is it?" Hermione's eyes softened. "It's memories. Look." The golden light thickened, and for a heartbeat, they saw themselves just as they were, but from outside the moment. Ron leaning closer, Hermione's face glowing in the candlelight, their hands brushing without intention. The magic lingered there, suspended, as if the air itself was trying to remind them of something precious they were missing. Then, just as quietly, the light faded. The candles burned steady again. Neither spoke for a while. Hermione's heartbeat thrummed like a quiet drum. She turned her quill in her fingers, trying to steady her breathing. "Hogwarts," she whispered. "It's alive tonight. It's showing us connections. Threads between people." Ron leaned back in his chair, staring at the candle. "You think it's showing everyone stuff like that?" She shook her head. "No, I think it's only showing us why us," he asked, voice low. Hermione looked down at the parchment. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because maybe we're ready to see it." The library fell back into stillness. Only the faint ticking of the enchanted clock on the far wall marked the passing of time. Yet, Everything felt slower, softer. Magic hung in the air like dust caught in sunlight, gentle, watchful. Later that night, they walked together through the corridors. The castle seemed to hum beneath their feet, alive with quiet energy. The portraits they passed turned their heads, smiling faintly, as if they too knew some secret. The torches dimmed slightly as they approached, then brightened again behind them, like a heartbeat. "Do you ever think," Ron said as they reached the grand staircase, "that maybe Hogwarts knows us better than we know ourselves?" Hermione smiled. "Sometimes I think it sees who we really are, not just what we do." They paused near one of the tall, arched windows overlooking the snowy grounds. Moonlight poured through, touching everything with silver. Hermione leaned her forehead lightly against the cold glass, her breath fogging it faintly. "When you think about it," she said softly, "it's kind of comforting that something so old and full of memory can still care about the people inside it." Ron looked at her in the dim light, her hair haloed by the moon, and for once, he didn't try to find a joke or a reason to speak. He simply nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It's nice to be seen." As they turned back toward the stairway, a low, melodic hum drifted through the corridor. It sounded almost like a song, but faint, like wind through glass. The light shifted again, washing the stone walls in soft gold. Hermione froze. "Ron, do you hear that?" He nodded. "It's coming from below." They followed the sound, their footsteps echoing gently as the melody grew stronger. It led them toward an old corridor they'd never noticed before, a narrow passage lined with ancient portraits and brass sconces that hadn't held fire in years. At the end of the hall stood an ornate door carved with the crest of Gryffindor himself. "It's locked," Ron murmured, testing the handle. Hermione traced her fingers over the carvings. "Wait." She reached into her pocket for her wand and whispered, "Alohomora." The lock clicked, slow and deliberate. The door opened inward, revealing a small circular room. Inside, a single object sat on a pedestal in the center, an hourglass, tall and elegant, its sand glowing faintly red. Ron exhaled. "Another time thing?" Hermione shook her head, stepping closer. "No, this is different. Look, there's no magic signature of movement. It's not measuring time." She paused, brow furrowing. "It's measuring something else." The sand inside the glass wasn't falling. It was rising, flowing upward, defying gravity, glowing brighter with each grain. The faint hum filled the air again, resonating through the room like the pulse of a living spell. Hermione whispered, "This isn't just old Hogwarts magic. It's emotional magic. Enchantments woven through centuries of human feeling. Every memory of love, friendship, kindness, it feeds into the castle's core." Ron looked mesmerized. "So the castle's alive because people cared?" She nodded slowly. "Because they still do." As they stood there, the sand began to swirl faster, forming delicate streams of light that danced around them. For a moment, the air shimmered with hundreds of faces, students from ages past, laughing, whispering, helping each other. The chamber pulsed softly, showing moments of quiet friendship, gestures of care, unspoken courage. Hermione felt tears prick her eyes. "It remembers everything good," she whispered, "every moment that mattered." The hourglass glowed brighter still, and one final vision appeared, a reflection of them both, standing in that very room, their hands just barely touching. The sand stilled, the glow faded, leaving only the soft rhythm of magic in the air. For a long time, neither spoke. The world outside had gone silent, as if the castle were giving them this moment entirely to themselves. Ron finally exhaled. "Hermione." She turned toward him, her voice gentle. "Yes?" "I think this castle's trying to say something." Hermione smiled through the faint glimmer in her eyes. "I think it's saying that love, real love, is part of its magic. The kind that isn't loud or heroic, but quiet." Steady, Ron nodded, his voice a whisper. "Like this." They didn't need to explain what this meant. The magic around them understood. The castle understood. The hum in the walls softened to a sigh. The torches flickered warmly, and somewhere above, the clock in Gryffindor Tower chimed gently, marking a moment that would live not in books or spells, but in memory, where time and love quietly become one. The next morning, a soft fog hung over the grounds of Hogwarts, turning the lawns into a sea of pale silver. Inside the castle, the students moved sleepily through their routines. The clatter of breakfast in the great hall, the rustle of cloaks, the chatter about lessons and exams. But for Ron and Hermione, the world seemed quieter, slower. Something about the night before lingered, not as a dream, but as a quiet pulse beneath their every thought. Hermione sat by the window in the library, her quill moving carefully over a sheet of parchment. The light spilling through the tall glass panes shimmered faintly across her ink bottle, as though the sunlight itself carried traces of magic. Her notes were neat and precise, theories about emotional enchantments, time-linked spells, and memory-infused artifacts. Yet her mind kept wandering to one line she'd written and underlined twice. Magic doesn't always appear in a spell. Sometimes it reveals itself through the heart. Across from her, Ron was pretending to study, though he was mostly staring at the snowflakes outside. His essay lay forgotten beside an untouched stack of books. His thoughts wandered back to the hourglass, the way the sand had risen, glowing with memories, the faces that had danced in the light. He'd never been good with words like Hermione was, but even he could feel it, the connection between the castle's magic and their own hearts. Finally, he broke the silence. "So, what do we do now?" Hermione looked up, startled. "Do?" He shrugged. "You know. About the hourglass, about the castle remembering people's feelings. I mean, if Hogwarts is alive with all that, maybe it's still listening." Hermione tilted her head thoughtfully, tapping her quill against the table. "Maybe it is. Maybe that's what the castle's trying to teach us, to listen back." Ron blinked. "To the castle?" "To each other," she said softly. For a long time, neither spoke. The air between them seemed to hum faintly, and the sunlight through the frosted window turned to a warm gold. That afternoon, they decided to return to the hidden chamber where the hourglass had glowed. It wasn't curiosity that drew them back. It was something gentler, a need to understand, to thank, perhaps even to say goodbye. The corridor leading there was empty, the air filled with the faint scent of old wood and candle wax. The portraits watched silently as they passed, their painted eyes kind and knowing. When they reached the door, Hermione placed her hand on the carvings again. The wood was warm, almost pulsing faintly. The door opened at her touch. Inside, the chamber was quiet. The hourglass stood where it had before, tall and elegant, but now the sand inside glowed faintly gold instead of red. Its light was softer, steadier, like a heartbeat. Hermione stepped forward, whispering, "It changed." Ron joined her, looking at the glass. "It's not rising anymore." "No," Hermione said, a small smile curving her lips. "It's balanced." "Maybe it's finished collecting." Ron frowned slightly. "Collecting what?" She looked up at him, her eyes gentle, moments like these. They stood there for a while, simply watching the hourglass glow in its quiet rhythm. Hermione reached out and traced her finger through the dust that had gathered on the pedestal. The warmth beneath her skin was alive, soft and real. "You know," she said quietly, "magic like this isn't about power. It's about preservation. It keeps the best parts of us from fading." Ron tilted his head, watching her expression. "You think we're part of it now?" Hermione smiled. "I think we always were. We just didn't realize it." The hum in the air seemed to agree. A faint shimmer passed through the room, lighting the edges of the hourglass in silver. They turned to leave, but before they reached the door, Ron stopped. "Hermione?" She paused, glancing back. "Yes?" He hesitated, the way he always did before saying something that mattered. "You ever think maybe that's what this all is? Hogwarts, us, the magic, all connected because we cared enough to see it?" Her heart softened at his words. "I think you're right," she whispered, "and I think caring is what keeps the magic alive." When they stepped back into the corridor, the castle felt different. The air was warmer, the torches glowed brighter, and the portraits whispered quietly to one another, smiling as if remembering something dear. They wandered slowly, not toward any destination. The castle seemed to guide their path, down a winding staircase, past the enchanted suits of armor that hummed softly as they passed. Every corner felt more alive than before. The walls shimmered faintly, as though listening to their footsteps. They paused outside the great hall. Through the slightly open doors, they could hear laughter, the comforting clatter of dishes, and the distant flutter of owl wings delivering post. The sound wrapped around them like a song of home. "Funny," Ron murmured. "You spend years thinking this place is all about spells and charms, and it turns out the real magic's just being here." Together, Hermione turned toward him, smiling faintly. "You've learned more than you think, Ronald Weasley," he grinned. "Don't tell McGonagall. She'll make me teach a class on it." Hermione laughed, a quiet, musical sound that echoed gently through the hall. For a moment, everything seemed timeless, as if the castle itself paused to listen, to etch the sound into its endless memory. As they made their way back to the common room, the staircases seemed to shift just a little slower than usual, as though giving them time to linger. Outside, the snow continued to fall, soft and endless. Inside, the warmth of Hogwarts glowed brighter than ever. Hermione stopped at the landing before their tower and turned to look out one of the tall arched windows. "You know," she said softly, "one day we'll leave us all this behind, these corridors, these late nights, this castle, but I think a part of it will always stay with us." Ron leaned against the wall beside her, his voice gentle, and maybe a part of us will stay with it. Hermione looked at him then, really looked, and saw him not as the boy who teased her or argued over essays, but as the friend who had stood beside her through every storm, who had seen her at her strongest and her most uncertain, and still remained. The air between them felt full again, full of magic, but also of quiet truth. For a long moment, they stood side by side, watching the snow swirl beyond the glass, listening to the castle's heartbeat all around them. Neither spoke, because some things didn't need words. When they finally turned toward the common room, the stairwell's golden light wrapped around them like a warm cloak. The castle's whispers faded into the steady rhythm of their footsteps, two friends walking not toward discovery, but toward understanding. Somewhere above them, the enchanted clock chimed softly, marking not just another hour, but another moment saved within the heart of Hogwarts, another thread woven into its tapestry of memory and love. And though they didn't yet know it, the castle would remember this day forever. That night, a rare stillness settled over Hogwarts. The snow outside fell heavier than ever, yet the castle remained warm, its fires glowing brighter as if to keep the storm at bay. The great windows shimmered with moonlight, and the air hummed faintly with the sound of enchantments old as time. Hermione sat by the common room fire again, parchment spread before her, though her quill had been motionless for some time. The flames flickered softly, and her eyes were distant, not on her notes, but on memory. Every moment from the past few days replayed in her mind like scenes in a living story. The blue fire that had shown them their possible future, the golden light in the library, the hourglass glowing with memory, and the warmth that now lingered between her and Ron wherever they went. She had spent her life searching for logic in the unexplainable, for structure within magic. Yet this, what Hogwarts had shown them, wasn't meant to be studied. It was meant to be felt. Ron entered quietly, his footsteps soft against the rug. He carried 2 mugs of cocoa, steam curling gently in the air. He set one down beside her without a word, then sank into the armchair opposite hers. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked after a long pause. Hermione smiled faintly, shaking her head. "No, the storm's too loud." Ron glanced at the window, where snow pressed thickly against the glass. "Storms never bothered you before." She hesitated. "This one feels different." He tilted his head. "Different how?" Hermione looked into the fire, her voice soft but steady. "It feels alive. Like the castle's magic is reaching out again. I can almost feel it." Ron nodded slowly, as if he'd felt it too. Like the air's got a heartbeat. They sat in silence for a while, sipping cocoa, listening to the fire. Then the familiar warmth shifted once more. The flames deepened in color, from orange to gold, from gold to blue. the same shade of magic that had visited them before. This time, however, the fire didn't reveal faces or memories. Instead, it pulsed softly, as though breathing. Then, from deep within its glow, a shape began to emerge, not of people, but of symbols. 4 shapes shimmered into being: a lion, a badger, an eagle, and a serpent, the crests of the 4 Hogwarts houses. They glowed together, their light weaving in and out until they formed a circle of living magic. Hermione leaned forward, her heart thudding gently but steadily. "It's the Founders," she whispered. Ron stared, wide-eyed. "Blimey, you think they're watching us?" "No," Hermione said quietly. "I think they're speaking to us." As the light brightened, the air in the room seemed to hum with a quiet, knowing rhythm. The house symbols pulsed once, twice, and then, as if connected by invisible thread, they projected a vision not of people, but of memory. It was Hogwarts itself, but not as they knew it. The walls were bare stone, new and unweathered. The great hall was smaller, its ceiling untouched by magic. The torches were simple, the staircases few, yet the castle felt the same, filled with purpose, with heart. The vision expanded, showing the 4 Founders: Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin, standing together beneath an unfinished ceiling. Their forms were made of light and memory, voices soft but echoing through the air like a lullaby. "It was never about power," said Godric's voice, warm and proud. "Nor about wisdom alone," murmured Rowena, her tone melodic and calm. Helga smiled gently, her hands glowing with gold. "It was about care, about teaching not just spells, but the heart behind them." And then, from the shadows, came Salazar's voice, quieter, thoughtful, and when hearts learn to understand one another, magic remembers. The 4 raised their wands together, and light filled the unfinished hall. The enchantments of Hogwarts were being woven before Ron and Hermione's eyes, the castle's living spirit coming to life. Every flicker of wand light became a heartbeat, every charm a breath. Hermione's eyes shone with awe. "This is it," she whispered. "This is the magic that built Hogwarts. The emotional essence, the love, the courage, the care. It's all here, every feeling that ever mattered." Ron gazed at the glowing forms of the Founders. "So that's what we've been feeling. It's not just ghosts or spells. It's them. It's what they left behind." The vision shimmered again, and the Founders' forms faded, replaced by the glowing hourglass they had found in the hidden chamber. Only now, it was vast, reaching from floor to ceiling, filled with countless grains of golden light. Each grain pulsed softly, alive with memory. Helga's voice echoed softly. "Every act of kindness adds to the sand." Rowena followed. "Every word spoken in understanding strengthens its glow." Godric's voice resonated gently. "And every courage of the heart keeps time within the castle alive." Salazar's tone was low and thoughtful. "So long as love is remembered here, Hogwarts will never fade." The light from the hourglass spread, reaching the walls, the ceiling, and finally the fire itself, until everything in the room shimmered with that same soft golden hue. The hum deepened into a melody, warm and endless, like the heartbeat of the world. Hermione felt tears on her cheeks, not of sadness, but of understanding. The hourglass isn't just a magical object, she said softly. It's the castle's heart. It remembers everything that matters, and it showed us because we were meant to see it. Ron's voice was quiet, because we're part of it now. The vision began to fade, but the warmth stayed. The symbols of the houses lingered for a moment longer, pulsing gently in perfect unison, and then, one by one, they dissolved into the air like drifting embers. The fire returned to its ordinary glow, steady, orange, comforting. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The world seemed hushed, balanced between one heartbeat and the next. Finally, Hermione looked up at Ron, her voice trembling but certain. Ron, this magic, this connection, it's not just about spells or fate. It's about how we care for each other. That's what gives Hogwarts its life. Ron met her gaze, and for once, he didn't look uncertain or shy. His voice was low and warm. Then maybe that's the strongest magic there is. The fire crackled softly, a spark rising into the air. Hermione smiled through her tears, whispering, "Yes, love, even the quiet kind, keeps everything alive." They sat together, letting the silence settle around them like a soft blanket. The castle seemed to bosom with contentment, its walls glowing faintly with the warmth of everything that had ever mattered. And outside, the snow continued to fall, endless, gentle, timeless, as Hogwarts held their hearts within its living memory. When morning finally came, the storm outside had quieted into a soft, delicate hush. Snow lay thick on the windowsills, glowing under the pale light of dawn. The castle, wrapped in silence, seemed to breathe evenly again, like a heart that had found its rhythm after a long and beautiful dream. Hermione stirred first, blinking in the golden wash of firelight that still lingered from the night before. The embers in the hearth glowed faintly, painting soft reflections across the stone walls. For a moment, she simply sat there, watching the play of light, remembering everything that had unfolded. The hourglass, the vision of the founders, the warmth of their words. It all felt like something precious and fragile, something she didn't dare disturb by speaking too soon. Ron woke soon after, rubbing his eyes and stretching, his hair sticking out in every direction. He yawned, blinking toward her with that familiar, half-asleep grin. "Did we stay down here all night?" Hermione smiled softly. "I think we did." He glanced around, as if expecting the room to still be filled with glowing symbols and swirling golden sand. But the common room looked perfectly ordinary again, cozy, safe, timeless. "You'd never guess what happened," he murmured. "That's how you know it was real," Hermione replied. "Magic doesn't always leave proof. Sometimes it just leaves peace." Ron nodded slowly, and then the two of them sat there, letting the calm of the morning settle around them. The castle was quiet, but not empty. There was a warmth beneath the silence, a kind of gratitude. It was as though Hogwarts itself was resting, content. Outside, the first rays of sunlight touched the towers, turning the icicles hanging from the rooftops into prisms of light. The great hall would soon fill with voices, laughter, and the clatter of breakfast plates, but for now, it was just the two of them and the soft, steady heartbeat of the castle. Hermione stood, gathering the parchment she had dropped beside her chair. "I don't think I'll ever be able to explain this in words," she said quietly. Ron looked up at her, smiling faintly. "You'll try, though," she laughed gently. "Of course I will." As they made their way down the corridors, the portraits along the walls seemed unusually awake. Some smiled as they passed, others whispered quietly to each other, as though sharing secrets. One, an old witch with kind eyes, gave a small nod as Hermione went by, a look that felt almost like acknowledgement. When they stepped into the great hall, the air was filled with the comforting sounds of morning, the flutter of owl wings, the soft murmur of conversation, the smell of toast and tea. Everything was familiar again, ordinary. But now, even the ordinary felt extraordinary. They joined Harry at their usual spot. He was already halfway through a plate of eggs and looked up with a grin. "Morning. You two look like you've been up all night, solving the mysteries of the universe again." Hermione smiled faintly, pouring herself some tea. "Something like that." Ron chuckled. "Yeah, you could say we found out what keeps Hogwarts ticking." Harry raised an eyebrow, but didn't press. Some things, even between friends, were meant to be felt rather than told. The rest of breakfast passed in warmth and quiet laughter. Outside, the snow glistened and sunlight poured across the long tables. Everything moved gently, in rhythm, as though time itself had slowed just enough for everyone to appreciate it. Later that day, Hermione and Ron walked once more past the corridor that led to the hidden chamber. The door was closed, its carvings faintly glowing as if in silent farewell. Hermione paused, resting her hand lightly on the wood. "Do you think it'll open again?" Ron asked softly. She smiled. "Maybe not for us. But someday, someone else will find it, when they're ready to listen." The light from the carvings shimmered faintly, almost like a wink. As they turned to leave, the faint hum of the castle followed them, a sound so soft it could have been the sigh of old stone or the whisper of memory. Hogwarts had always been a place of learning, of laughter, of courage. But now, Ron and Hermione knew it was also a living heart, one that remembered love in all its forms. And as the day drifted gently onward, the castle stood quietly under its blanket of snow, its walls glowing faintly in the sunlight, timeless, breathing and content, carrying within it the quiet truth that love, once felt, never fades. As night fell once more over Hogwarts, the castle seemed wrapped in peace. The snow had slowed to a quiet drift, the flakes gliding down like soft feathers against the dark blue of the sky. Inside, the torches burned low, casting a golden warmth that touched every stone and corridor. The air was filled with a sense of calm, the kind that comes after understanding something deeper than words. Ron and Hermione stood by one of the tall windows in the Gryffindor common room, watching the snow gather on the ledges. The fire crackled behind them, soft and rhythmic, the room bathed in a comforting glow. They didn't speak for a while. They didn't need to. The silence between them felt full, peaceful, like the quiet hum of magic itself. Finally, Hermione turned slightly, her voice a gentle whisper. "It's strange, isn't it? How something as simple as love can be the greatest spell of all." Ron smiled faintly, his gaze still fixed on the drifting snow. "Yeah, and no one even needs a wand for it." She laughed softly, her hand brushing the frost on the window pane. "That's what makes it powerful. It's everywhere, in friendship, in care, in the small things we do without even realizing they're magic." Ron nodded. Guess Hogwarts knew that all along. The castle seemed to sigh in agreement, a faint warmth spreading through the room as if in response to their words. The clock above the fireplace chimed softly, each note slow and delicate, marking the passage of time in reverse harmony. Backward or forward, it no longer mattered. Time inside Hogwarts flowed with the heart. Hermione rested her head lightly against the window frame, her eyes soft with thought. "No matter where we go after this, or what happens, this place, these moments, they'll stay with us." Ron's voice was low and warm. "Yeah, Hogwarts keeps its promises." The flames flickered one last time, throwing patterns of light that danced gently across the floor. The castle settled into its nightly rhythm, the whispers of portraits fading, the stairs slowing their movements, the walls humming a quiet lullaby of old magic. Outside, the moon rose higher, casting silver light over the towers. Inside, peace lingered, deep, enduring, alive. And as the castle's heartbeat echoed softly through its walls, the story of two friends, bound not just by destiny, but by quiet affection, became another golden thread woven into Hogwarts' endless tapestry of love and memory. Somewhere, far beyond the night, the magic watched over them still, calm, eternal, and kind.